欢迎各位来到全球首档无语别青年演讲节目。Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, and this is the world first multilingual youth talk show, Hey the World!
洞察、发问，在国际新闻一线与世界对话。国际舆论瞬息万变，新闻现场唇枪舌战。发出中国声音，把握话语权是我的使命。听懂世界，才能真正让世界听懂中国。我是王冠，我与世界说。
Hey guys, so good to be with you. My name is Wang Guan, and I'm a Chinese journalist, otherwise known as a Chinese propaganda worker, according to Western mainstream media. Did you guys ever wonder who does the most sophisticated propaganda of all? This is a recent cover of Time magazine when Russia bombed Ukraine. Agony of Ukraine. And this is its cover 20 years ago when the US attacked Yugoslavia. It says, "Attack opens the door to peace." But this is certainly not propaganda. I mean, this is Western journalism, or to be more exact, Western political discourse at its finest, exposing the evils of the bad guys and beating the drums for the good. Guys, remember the US invasion of Iraq back then? The Pentagon called it the preventative war, and the US torture of terrorist suspects was officially known as enhanced interrogation methods. CIA's kidnapping of foreign nationals was just extraordinary rendition. I've worked in Washington, D.C. for 8 years, and I must tell you, I'm very impressed by how good some of the American politicians are at explaining, or should I say, spinning things, especially when it comes to China. People who stormed the Capitol Hill were violent mobs, while those who vandalized Hong Kong's legislature were pro-democracy demonstrators. Extremists killing innocent lives in London or Paris were, of course, terrorists, while those committing same horrors in China were repressed ethnic minorities. And the US went to Africa and Latin America for international development, while China building infrastructures there was neocolonialism. China doing neocolonialism in Latin America? Then which country overthrew the governments in Chile, Bolivia, Guatemala, Honduras, Nicaragua, Panama, and the Dominican Republic? Now, the dominant narrative in Washington these days is that China is an aggressive power seeking to replace America. But allow me to mention that it is the United States who has over 800 military bases across 70 countries and fought 20 wars in the past 40 years. China, on the other hand, has one overseas military base in one country and fought one war in the past 40 years. Now, some folks will say, what about China boosting its military deterrence in South China Sea and across the Taiwan Strait? Well, let's put aside China's historical claims over these regions, which are well documented. Just imagine this. How would the US react? I think the real danger of it all, the real danger of following a simplistic script on China, is that it feeds on people's ignorance and fear is the breeding ground for war. You already see rising negative perception towards China reaching historic highs in America and Western Europe. My fear is that these anti-China propaganda may make the Thucydides trap a self-fulfilling prophecy. Don't get me wrong, guys. I'm not here to pick a fight, all right? I just want to remind our friends in the West that if they think they have the absolute truth on China, they can perhaps think again. And if they still think Chinese journalists are a bunch of faceless propaganda workers, well, here's my story of how I became a Chinese journalist. It all started here, the Associated Press Television Beijing Bureau. Did you guys see me in the photo? Probably not, right? I mean, I could barely find myself in the first place. But notice the guy wearing glasses in the bottom right corner, holding the long stuff, the boomstick. That was me, just making the cut. Now, at 21, I became an intern assistant producer at AP Television Beijing Bureau. I started off setting up tripods and operating the boom mic for my Western photographer colleagues at news conferences and wherever stories broke. Now, soon enough, I also became a field producer and scriptwriter too. Working in one of the world's busiest newsrooms was an experience of a lifetime. At the end of that 10-month internship, I got a job offer from AP with a very tempting salary package. But I also got an offer from CCTV, China's largest broadcaster. That was the toughest decision I had ever had to make. I chose CCTV because there was an inner calling saying that something didn't feel quite right, and I've got to fix it. It didn't feel quite right when China's news media were despised and Chinese reporters were regarded by their Western peers as somehow inferior. It didn't feel right when the foreign press corps in Beijing was always the first to report on what's happening in my country. And it didn't feel right when the struggles and triumphs of the Chinese people, my people, were reduced to biases, stereotypes, and caricatures. So I became a CCTV/CGTN correspondent, first in Beijing and then in Washington. The one thing we regard as our mandate is to debunk myths and misinformation about China and other countries in the global south. I mean, the free flow of information shouldn't just be one that flows from the west to the rest, right? Nor should it be one that flows just from the first world countries to the third world regions. I was one of the first Chinese TV reporters to, thankfully, ask questions routinely at the US Department of State press briefings. For the very first time I was there, actually, I questioned the effectiveness of US sanctions on Cuba and the DPRK, and whether those US sanctions defeat their own purpose. Now, on my program, John Kerry became the first US Secretary of State to openly acknowledge that there could be American thefts of commercial secrets from China and Brazil. Susan Rice was the senior-most US White House official to use the phrase terrorist attack to describe the events that had happened in China. In fact, as major Western news networks downsized their bureaus in Africa and Latin America, CGTN opened up more bureaus in those regions and provided more coverage of the global south than any other international news media. We gave a voice to the voiceless in the developing world. And instead of resorting to sensationalism and 10-second soundbite, we ran long-formatted feature stories focusing on climate change, poverty, technology, trade, issues concerning our collective, sustainable future. Having said all this, I'm not saying that the Chinese journalism or Chinese journalistic approach doesn't have its problems to work on. I'm saying neither China nor the West should claim universality of their values and institutions. The Western journalistic approach of being a watchdog, exposing wrongdoings, and highlighting opposing views have oftentimes worked for their societies. But the Chinese journalistic approach of highlighting society's common stakes, cultivating informed consensus, and galvanizing concerted actions arguably have its merits too. And to understand this Chinese approach, one needs to understand the Chinese culture. You know this character? He, or harmony. It's the most cherished ideal in the Chinese culture, but given its significance, it's arguably the least understood. The concept of he, or harmony, in fact, is all about difference. Hesheng, or harmony in a symphony orchestra, lies not in everyone playing the same instrument, but in the pianist, the violinist, and the flute player, each being uniquely their own, while being mindful of the group tempo. 家和, or harmony in the family, doesn't mean there won't be clashes of personalities and opinions, but means we must recognize and reconcile those clashes in a practical, constructive, and forward-looking manner. And hoping, or world peace, lies not in all countries being the same, but in our working through our differences and moving towards a collective future. Because our common stakes are now so much higher than they have ever been, that the past political paradigms such as realism may no longer be the best model in predicting our future. Now to end, I'd like to quote Confucius, who said, "In our differences, Gentleman seeks harmony, but not uniformity. 君子和而不同. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for Mr. Wang Guan. Just give us such an amazing speech and the opinions sharing. So now let's light it up with your proposal.
I propose that young people around the world embrace each other and build a bridge of friendship for cross-cultural understanding.
Thank you so much for your proposal, and this is a really, really amazing proposal and also your speech. So young people are the future of the world. They have the duty to just bring out the truth for comprehensive and multidimensional information from China to the world. I think we will do it better. Thank you so much. And this is Hey the World. And see you next time.
Thank you very much, guys. Thank you. Because our common stakes are now so much higher than they have ever been, that the past political paradigms such as realism may no longer be the best model in predicting our future.
莫罕达兹·甘地曾经说过
Ninguna cultura en este mundo puede sobrevivir si intenta ser exclusiva.
I'd like to quote Confucius, who said, "In our differences, gentleman seeks harmony, but not uniformity." 君子和而不同.
أنا من أهل الشاندون التي تبعد مسقط رئيس كونفوشيوس بحوالي 100 كيلومتر. قال كونفوشيوس:
Des hommes vertueux poursuivent l'harmonie au lieu de l'uniformité.